Muscular wealthy CEO entered the wrong hotel room at the resort and was shocked by what he saw. Neither knew that beneath the torn documents lay a contract with both their names, connecting them long before fate brought them to this room. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately known your life was about to change? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The magnetic card beeped green, granting him access to luxury Suite 1102. But instead of an empty bed waiting for his exhausted body, he found a woman in a wedding dress with mascara-stained cheeks clutching a torn-up prenup with his company's logo hidden in the debris. Blake Maddox froze in the doorway. His alcohol-clouded mind struggled to process the scene before him. The woman didn't scream, didn't move, just looked up with eyes that had cried themselves empty. Wrong room, he managed, his deep voice rough from celebrating the multi-million-dollar merger he'd finalized hours earlier. Miami's neon skyline pulsed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting alternating shadows across her tear-streaked face and the white satin pooled around her legs like surrender. An unopened bottle of champagne sat on the nightstand beside torn flower petals and what appeared to be legal documents shredded in rage. Clearly, she finally replied, a bitter laugh escaping lips still perfectly painted for a kiss that never happened. But you're the second man to enter this room uninvited, and maybe you're the right one. Something in her tone made Blake step fully inside, letting the door close behind him. He should leave, call hotel security. Instead, he found himself drawn to her vulnerability, a rare authenticity he never encountered in his world of corporate masks and calculated moves. His eyes lingered on her bare shoulders, the elegant curve of her neck. An unexpected awareness passed between them, something primal and electric despite the bizarre circumstances. I'm in 1202, he explained, noting the simple mistake. Guess the champagne from the deal's celebration hit harder than I thought. She gestured to the bottle beside her. I've got plenty, not like I have anyone to share it with now. Her wedding gown caught the light as she moved, momentarily dazzling him. This close, he could see the intricate beadwork, the careful stitching, all that preparation for a moment that imploded. You want to talk about it? The question surprised him as much as her. You want to listen? She countered, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Blake couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation without an agenda. His schedule was planned weeks in advance. His relationships were carefully curated. Yet something about this woman's raw pain called to the part of himself he'd buried under spreadsheets and stock options. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately known your life was about to change? What did that moment feel like for you? Because for Blake Maddox, titan of tech industry, walking into the wrong hotel room would alter his destiny in ways he couldn't imagine. I've got nowhere to be, he found himself saying, loosening his tie. When she whispered, neither do I, something primal in his chest responded before his brain could intervene. He sat beside her on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch the wedding dress, and reached for the champagne. Neither knew that beneath the torn documents lay a contract with both their names, connecting them long before fate brought them to this room. Two strangers shouldn't share secrets before names. But as midnight approached, the abandoned bride and the CEO, who'd never been vulnerable, had already exchanged wounds deeper than their identities. Alana, she finally offered, 3 glasses into the wedding champagne that should have toasted her marriage. Blake, he returned, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as the night deepened around them. The bottle between them emptied as walls came down. Blake shared the loneliness at the top, the exhaustion of constant vigilance in a world where everyone wanted something from him. Alana spoke of betrayal, a fiancé who disappeared hours before vows, leaving only a text that explained nothing. He said he couldn't go through with a mistake, she explained, fingers tracing the crystal rim of her glass. After 3 years together, the hotel suite transformed with each hour, from a shrine of broken promises to a confessional booth where two souls unexpectedly collided. They'd moved from the edge of the bed to its center, shoes off, formality abandoned. I've never told anyone about the fertility results, Blake found himself admitting, surprising himself more than her. "The doctors say I'll likely never have children. Hard to bring that up on first dates. Men usually run from damaged goods," Alana countered, the champagne loosening her tongue. "Can't imagine many women run from wealthy, gorgeous CEOs, even with complications." The compliment hung between them. Their fingers touched around champagne flutes, neither pulling away. The contact sent electricity up his arm. Blake noticed everything about her now. The slight gap between her front teeth when she really smiled. The constellation of freckles across her shoulders. How her wedding dress had slipped to reveal the elegant curve of her collarbone. What kind of man leaves someone like you at the altar? The question escaped before he could filter it. Her laugh held no humor. "The kind who finds something better, I guess." "Not possible," Blake replied, the sincerity in his voice surprising them both. Outside, Miami pulsed with nightlife. Inside, time suspended as two people who should never have met discovered strange commonalities. Both lost parents young. Both fought their way through education against expectations. Both buried themselves in work to avoid deeper connections. Their conversation flowed like they'd known each other for years instead of hours, punctuated by moments of charged silence when their eyes held too long or hands brushed accidentally. Have you ever told a stranger something you've never shared with your closest friends? What makes those fleeting connections so powerful that we drop our carefully constructed masks? "It's almost sunrise," Alana noted, nodding toward the lightning sky outside the massive windows. Blake checked his watch, shocked to discover they'd talked through the night. His phone had been buzzing periodically, but he'd ignored it, something he never did. As dawn broke over Miami, Blake reached for his phone to call his assistant, and froze when the screen displayed 3 missed calls from someone named Marcus Pierce, the same last name as the woman now asleep on his shoulder. She woke up wearing yesterday's heartbreak and a stranger's dress shirt. While he stood at the window, already rebuilding the walls her presence had momentarily toppled. Alana blinked into consciousness, momentarily disoriented. The wedding gown lay draped over a chair. She vaguely remembered Blake helping her out of it when the weight became too much, offering his shirt as a more comfortable alternative. Nothing had happened between them beyond conversation, yet the intimacy of waking in his clothing felt more exposed than if they'd spent the night in passion. Blake turned from a window, phone in hand, eyes calculating where they had been warm hours before. "Coffee," he offered, gesturing to the service tray that had arrived while she slept. Morning light stripped away night's forgiving shadows, revealing not just her puffy eyes and his day-old stubble, but the vast differences between their worlds. In daylight, Blake Maddox was clearly wealthy, from his custom watch to the casual way he'd ordered breakfast without checking prices. Alana felt suddenly conscious of her Atlanta middle-class background. "I should go," she said, gathering dignity around herself like armor. "Where?" His question was simple but devastating. She had no answer. The honeymoon suite was paid through the week, money already spent from her modest savings. Her return flight wasn't for 10 days. Her apartment in Atlanta was being sublet while she was supposed to be honeymooning. "I need a shower," she deflected, heading to the bathroom. Blake watched her retreat, his mind racing. The coincidence bothered him. Pierce wasn't a rare surname, but 3 calls from someone sharing her last name immediately after meeting her? Blake hadn't built a tech empire by ignoring patterns. While water ran in the bathroom, he did what came naturally, research. His fingers flew across his phone, pulling up information. Alana Pierce, 29, pediatric nurse at Atlanta Children's Hospital. Engaged to David Chun, biomedical researcher. Social media showed a normal life. Friends, work events, engagement photos. Then he found it, a photo from 6 months ago. Alana smiling beside Marcus Pierce, the very tech entrepreneur who'd been trying to destroy Blake's company for the past year. The caption read, "Work dinner with cousin Marcus. So proud of his new venture." The bathroom door opened, releasing steam, and Alana wrapped in a hotel robe, her natural beauty more striking without yesterday's wedding makeup. Something tightened in Blake's chest despite his suspicions. Her eyes caught him quickly closing browser tabs. "Finding out if I'm an axe murderer?" Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. Just checking messages, he lied smoothly. Blake watched her move around the room, collecting scattered items. A hairpin, a bracelet, her phone. Something about her movements didn't match what he'd expect from someone devastated by abandonment. She moved with purpose, with contained energy. He couldn't help noticing the elegant line of her neck as she bent to retrieve an earring, the curve of her calf visible beneath the robe. Their eyes met in the mirror, and the charge between them intensified despite his growing suspicion. How quickly have you judged someone based on their background? Did you ever discover you were completely wrong? The space between first impressions and truth can change everything. I'm keeping this room through the week, he found himself saying. Stay. The adjoining suite is empty. I'll have them prepare it for you. Her refusal died on her lips when he added, consider it a gesture of human decency. No expectations. As she nodded cautious acceptance, Blake's phone buzzed again. Marcus Pierce calling for the fourth time. He silenced it, decision made. As he scrolled through her Instagram while she returned to the bathroom, Blake's thumb froze on a photo from 6 months ago, Alana smiling beside the very tech entrepreneur who'd been trying to destroy his company for the past year. He offered her the adjoining suite for a week, not from charity or attraction, but because something about her story didn't add up, and Blake Maddox had built an empire by investigating inconsistencies. I can't accept this, Alana protested when the hotel staff finished preparing the connecting room. Her pride battled with practicality as she stood in the doorway, still wearing his shirt over her own clothes retrieved from her luggage. You're not accepting anything permanent, Blake countered. Just a breathing space to figure out your next move. What he didn't say. I need time to figure out if you're connected to my business rival. If this meeting was truly coincidence or something more calculated. The oceanfront resort became their shared territory. Separate worlds by day as he took calls by the private pool and she walked barefoot on the beach, coming together each evening like magnets unable to resist alignment. Blake watched her from behind designer sunglasses, noting details. How she spent hours writing in a journal. How she avoided checking her phone. How her smile emerged gradually over days, like a plant turning toward unexpected light. His assistant's voice came through his earpiece. I got the information you requested on Alana Pierce, sir. Go ahead, Blake replied, eyes never leaving Alana's distant figure collecting shells along the shoreline. Clean background, excellent professional record, no financial red flags, parents deceased, one living relative of note. Marcus Pierce, Blake finished. Yes, sir. First cousin on her father's side, currently CEO of Rival Tech, and her fiancé, David Chun, biomedical researcher specializing in algorithm-based diagnostic tools. Recently began consulting for Rival Tech after leaving Atlanta General Hospital under unclear circumstances. Blake processed this information, watching Alana laugh as waves chased her up the beach. Each evening, they'd shared meals, conversations deepening beyond surface details. He learned about her passion for pediatric medicine, her dream of improving diagnostic systems for childhood diseases. She discovered his background rising from nothing, building his company from a dorm room idea to industry giant. What he couldn't reconcile, the genuine person he was coming to know versus the suspicious connections surrounding her. Their knees touched under restaurant tables. Their hands brushed when reaching for the same item. Each accidental contact sent awareness coursing through his body. He caught her looking at his mouth when he spoke, her eyes lingering on his shoulders when he emerged from swimming. Have you ever accepted generosity that made you uncomfortable? What price did it come with? Trust doesn't come easily after betrayal, but sometimes healing requires risk. 5 days into their unexpected arrangement, Blake received the detailed background report he'd commissioned. Alana's story checked out. The wedding had been scheduled, invitations sent, venue booked. Her fiancé had indeed disappeared hours before the ceremony, though rumors suggested he'd been seen with her maid of honor. Blake was beginning to believe in coincidence when his assistant's text arrived. Found something. Her ex-fiancé David Chun is Pierce's cousin. Blake's head snapped up. Not her cousin, her ex-fiancé's cousin, which meant His eyes found Alana returning from her beach walk, sunset painting her in gold, smiling at him with growing trust. His assistant's text was clear. Marcus Pierce worked for Rival Tech until 3 months ago. No connection to the woman found yet. But as Blake watched Alana laugh with the bartender, another message arrived. Found something. Her ex-fiancé, David Chun, is Pierce's cousin. 5 days into their unexpected coexistence, he finally asked about the prenup she'd torn apart the night he found her, never mentioning he'd already pieced it together and discovered clauses that made his blood run cold. "Let's talk about the elephant in the room," Blake suggested as they shared dinner on his suite's balcony. Miami sparkled below them, the private setting intimate under string lights. Alana tensed, fork pausing halfway to her mouth. Which elephant? The abandoned bride part or the mysterious CEO rescue part? "The prenup I found you destroying when I walked in." Her eyes dropped to her plate. "Standard protection. David comes from money. His family insisted." "Most people don't rip up legal documents in rage," Blake pressed, watching her reaction carefully. "Most people don't get text dumped hours before their wedding." A flash of genuine pain crossed her face. There were unusual clauses, things I hadn't noticed when initially reviewing it. Blake refilled her wine glass, noting how the deep red caught the light like blood. Such as intellectual property stipulations. Anything I developed during our marriage would be partially owned by his family company. Her jaw tightened. Convenient, considering my research. This aligned with what Blake had discovered. The prenup fragments he'd collected and reassembled mentioned algorithmic developments, medical patents, and, most alarmingly, a non-compete clause mentioning Blake's company specifically. South Beach glittered before them. Beautiful people moving like exotic fish between cabanas and shoreline. But Blake saw only her profile against the setting sun, wondering if her lips would taste like danger or salvation. "What's your research focus?" he asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it from her. "Diagnostic algorithms for pediatric diseases." Enthusiasm animated her features. "I've developed a system that can predict certain childhood cancers months before conventional methods, using fewer invasive procedures. The same technology his company had been trying to acquire. The same field where Rival Tech was making aggressive moves." Her hand rested inches from his on the table. 5 days of growing awareness had created a current between them, electric and dangerous. "Walk with me on the beach," Blake suggested, standing and offering his hand. Alana hesitated, then placed her fingers in his. The contact sent heat up his arm. They strolled along the private beach, shoes abandoned, pants rolled up. Their conversations had grown deeper each day, revealing unexpected connections, both driven by work that consumed them, both guarded about their hearts. When they reached a secluded cove, Blake stopped. Moonlight silvered the waves and illuminated her face. Without analyzing his actions, he leaned down, pressing his lips to hers. The kiss began tentatively, a question, not a demand. Her initial surprise melted into response, her body arching toward his, hands finding his shoulders. Heat flared between them, months of tension in both their lives channeling into this connection. His hands framed her face, thumbs caressing her cheekbones as the kiss deepened. When attraction collides with suspicion, which one wins in your experience? Have you ever wanted someone you weren't sure you could trust? Blake pulled back first, conflicted. Her eyes remained closed momentarily, lips slightly parted, vulnerability evident in her expression. As they walked back to the hotel, her phone rang. Blake caught the caller ID. David. When she declined the call, her hand trembling, he knew he should tell her everything. Instead, he suggested dinner in his suite tomorrow, determined to uncover the truth before desire overwhelmed caution. The bottle of Cabernet loosened more than their inhibitions. It uncapped the dangerous chemistry they'd been fighting since the moment he walked through her door. Blake poured the wine with practiced ease, his suite transformed by candlelight and the Miami skyline twinkling beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd ordered a private dinner, steaks, truffle mashed potatoes, chocolate souffle waiting under silver domes. Quite the upgrade from room service pizza, Alana commented, taking the glass he offered. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, that now familiar current passing between them. 6 days since he'd walked into her room. 1 day since their kiss on the beach. "I wanted tonight to be special," Blake admitted, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. The casual intimacy of the gesture wasn't lost on either of them. Candlelight transformed the suite into a golden sanctuary, shadows dancing across her collarbones as she leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper that drew him in like gravity. "Why?" she asked simply. The question hung between them, honest, direct, demanding truth when Blake had spent a career calculating his responses. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he answered, surprising himself with raw honesty. "Because nothing about this makes sense, yet it's the only thing that has felt real in years." Alana's eyes darkened. She set down her wine glass and moved around the table toward him. "Show me real, then." Her boldness ignited something primal in him. Blake stood, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands found her waist as hers slid up his chest to his shoulders. Their mouths met with none of yesterday's hesitation. Only hunger, months of loneliness, and the electric connection that had been building since that first night. He backed her against the wall, his body pressing against hers as the kiss deepened. Her hands found his hair, tugging slightly, drawing a groan from deep in his chest. "I want you," he murmured against her neck, giving her every opportunity to stop this. "I've wanted you since you walked through my door," she confessed, fingers already working the buttons of his shirt. They moved toward the bedroom, leaving clothes like breadcrumbs, her blouse by the dining table, his shirt near the sofa, her skirt at the bedroom threshold. In the moonlight streaming through windows, they paused to look at each other. Blake's eyes traveled over her body, taking in curves typically hidden beneath modest clothing. Alana's gaze was equally appreciative, her fingers tracing the defined muscles of his chest, shoulders, abdomen. "You're sure?" he asked, one last moment of restraint. Her answer was to pull him down onto the bed, their bodies melding together as if designed as counterparts. What followed wasn't the calculated seduction Blake had mastered through years of brief relationships, but something raw and honest. 2 people discovering each other's bodies with the same intensity they'd been discovering each other's minds. He worshipped every inch of her skin, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her arch against him begging for more. She matched his passion, her confidence growing with each response she drew from him. When they finally joined, the intensity nearly overwhelmed them both. They moved together, finding a rhythm that built toward release, eyes locked in unexpected connection that transcended physical pleasure. Is physical connection ever just physical? Or does it always reveal something deeper about who we are behind our masks? Afterward, as she slept beside him, Blake unlocked his phone and found the email from his investigator with subject line, "Urgent. A. Pierce background check results." His thumb hovered over it, heart pounding. Then he deleted it unread, knowing that whatever truth awaited would shatter this moment he wasn't ready to lose. She discovered his search history while borrowing his laptop. Her name paired with background check, rival tech connection, and Marcus Pierce relation, and realized the man who'd been inside her body was still treating her like an enemy combatant. Morning sunlight streamed across the rumpled sheets where they'd spent the night discovering each other's bodies. Blake had stepped into the shower, leaving Alana alone with his open laptop. She'd only meant to check her email, not wanting to drain her phone battery. That's when she saw it, the browser tabs he'd forgotten to close. Her name, her history, her connections meticulously investigated. The paradise-like surroundings of their ocean view suite transformed into a battlefield, the space between them expanding with each accusation, each half-truth. When Blake emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, hair still damp, he found her fully dressed, laptop screen turned toward him, her eyes hard with betrayal. "Find what you were looking for, detective." Her voice could have frozen the Miami heat. Blake didn't insult her with denial. "I needed to understand the connection." "What connection?" she demanded. "Marcus Pierce has been trying to acquire my company for over a year. He's your cousin. Your ex-fiancé works for him. Blake kept his voice level despite the droplets of water still tracking down his chest, despite the hurt radiating from her. The night I met you, you called me 4 times. So I'm what, corporate espionage? A honey trap. Her laugh was bitter. You think I planned to be left at the altar as part of some elaborate scheme to, what exactly? Seduce information out of you. The timing was suspicious, Blake admitted, reaching for clothes. The timing was my life falling apart. Alana's control broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, Marcus is my cousin. Yes, David works with him now. No, I didn't know you and Marcus were business rivals until yesterday when I Googled you. Blake froze. Yesterday? But yes, we slept together before I knew who you really were, she cut him off. Unlike some people, I don't do background checks before getting involved. The space between them seemed uncrossable now. Blake moved toward her, but she stepped back. Don't. Her voice cracked. Last night meant something to me. I thought. She trailed off, but Blake heard the unspoken conclusion. She thought he felt it too, the connection that went beyond physical attraction or convenient proximity. It did mean something, he insisted, reaching for her despite her resistance. Their bodies collided, anger and attraction creating a volatile chemistry. His mouth found hers in a kiss that was part apology, part claim. For a moment, she responded, hands gripping his shoulders, body arching toward his. Then she pushed him away, breathing hard. No, I won't be your suspect and your lover. Have you ever discovered someone wasn't who they claimed to be? Did you confront them or walk away? Blake ran a hand through his damp hair, frustration evident. I've spent my adult life with people wanting something from me, my money, my influence, my connections. Forgive me for being cautious. Cautious is asking questions. What you did was investigation without consent. Alana gathered her things, heading for the door, connecting their suites. As she reached for the handle, Blake's phone lit up on the nightstand. Marcus Pierce calling again. Alana froze, watching Blake's expression. Answer it, she challenged. Let's hear what my cousin wants so badly. Blake picked up the phone, putting it on speaker. Maddox, he answered curtly. Blake, finally, we need to talk about the merger. I have a proposition that will benefit us both. As Blake's eyes locked with Alana's, her face drained of color. She whispered, don't answer that. Please. There are things you don't understand. The boardroom was his natural habitat, until Alana walked in beside Marcus Pierce, wearing professional armor and the expression of someone about to detonate a bomb. Blake had returned to San Francisco 2 days after their confrontation, leaving Alana in Miami to think things through. In reality, he needed distance to sort truth from suspicion, desire from common sense. Now, seated at the head of his company's glass conference table, Blake maintained his CEO mask as his assistant announced, Mr. Pierce is here for your meeting, sir. Marcus Pierce entered first, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, sharp smile. Blake had expected him. He hadn't expected Alana to follow, dressed in a tailored navy dress that transformed her from vacation fling to professional equal. Their eyes met across the polished table, hers giving nothing away while his fought to hide shock. You know my colleague, Dr. Pierce? Marcus asked, clearly enjoying Blake's momentary loss of composure. Blake recovered quickly. We've met. The San Francisco skyline spread below his corner office like a kingdom he'd built from nothing. But for the first time, the view failed to center him as Alana sat across the conference table, now a stranger in familiar skin. Dr. Pierce is our newest medical research consultant, Marcus explained, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Her diagnostic algorithm work is groundbreaking. Blake's team filled the remaining seats, laptops opening, pleasantries exchanged. Throughout the presentation about potential partnership opportunities between their companies, Blake found his attention repeatedly drawn to Alana. She spoke confidently about her research, occasionally meeting his gaze with professional detachment that revealed nothing of their intimate nights. Yet Blake noticed details others missed. The slight tremor in her fingers when passing documents, the faint flush when their hands accidentally touched, reaching for coffee. The synergy between Alana's diagnostic tools and your processing systems could revolutionize pediatric care, Marcus was saying. Exclusive rights would be worth substantial consideration. The pieces suddenly clicked. Marcus wanted Blake's advanced AI systems to scale Alana's medical algorithms, technology that could save thousands of children while generating billions in revenue. Throughout the presentation, memories of their bodies entwined. Her size and his ear competed with the current reality of spreadsheets and market projections. Each time their eyes met, electricity arced between them, invisible to others yet nearly overwhelming to Blake. When personal and professional worlds collide, which one usually wins? Have you ever had to face someone across a boardroom table who had seen you at your most vulnerable? We'll need time to consider the proposal, Blake concluded as the meeting ended. My team will review the specifics. People filtered out, leaving just the three of them. Marcus checked his watch. I have another appointment. Alana, can you handle any follow-up questions? Once alone, the professional veneer cracked. Blake stood by the windows, back to her voice tight. Were you ever going to mention this? I found out about the meeting yesterday, Alana replied, remaining seated. Marcus called offering me a consulting position to present my research. I had no idea it was to your company until I arrived. Blake turned, studying her face for deception. Finding none, he asked, in Miami? Was that coincidence too? My life isn't a strategy, Blake. It's a mess. Her honesty disarmed him. I was really left at the altar. I really met you by accident. And I really felt something with you I wasn't expecting. After everyone left, she remained, sliding a folder across his desk. I was hired to evaluate your company's diversity initiatives before the merger. Meeting you was coincidence. Her eyes held his. But what happened after wasn't in anyone's plan, especially mine. The hotel receipt showed she'd booked her room 2 weeks before her wedding date, suggesting she planned her escape long before her fiancé supposedly left her at the altar. Blake stared at the document in his private office 2 days after the surprise meeting. He'd resisted further investigation after their Miami confrontation, but Marcus's proposal had triggered his protective instincts. Now, evidence in his hands painted a different picture than the abandoned bride story. When Alana entered his office for their scheduled follow-up meeting, he pushed the paper across his desk without greeting. Explain this, he demanded, voice controlled. She glanced at the receipt, face paling. Where did you get this? Does it matter? You booked that hotel room 2 weeks before your wedding. Before David supposedly left you. Blake leaned forward. You lied to me. His penthouse overlooking the Bay Bridge became a courtroom. With Alana in the witness stand and Blake wielding evidence like weapons, each document another nail in the coffin of what they'd built. I didn't lie about being left, she replied quietly. I just didn't tell you I suspected it might happen. Blake's jaw tightened. What else haven't you told me? David had been distant for months. I found messages between him and my best friend. Her voice remained steady despite the pain in her eyes. I booked the room as insurance. Somewhere to go when it fell apart. And the prenup with my company specifically mentioned? I didn't know about that clause until the night before the wedding. David added it without telling me. She met his gaze directly. That's why I tore it up. I was already planning to leave him when he beat me to it. Blake wanted to believe her. The connection they'd shared in Miami felt too real to be fabricated. Yet the businessman in him noted too many convenient explanations. And your cousin Marcus? The job offer that brings you directly to my company. Marcus has been trying to recruit me for years. I always refused because I wanted independence from family connections. She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture he'd come to recognize as her gathering courage. After Miami, I needed work, distance, perspective. I didn't know his target was your company until I walked into that meeting. Physical proximity during their heated exchange heightened awareness of each other. Despite his suspicion, Blake noticed her pulse at her throat, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her lips parted slightly when his gaze dropped to them. There's more you're not telling me, he challenged, moving around the desk to stand before her. Yes, she admitted, but not what you think. The tension between them shifted from accusation to the magnetic pull that had drawn them together from that first night. Blake stepped closer, invading her space. Then what? Have you ever discovered someone's lie, but sensed there was truth beneath it? How did you decide whether to dig deeper or walk away? Their faces inches apart, the moment balanced on a knife's edge between anger and desire. Blake's hand moved to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "Wanting you while you suspect me." The almost kiss hung between them, interrupted when Alana reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Her tears weren't what stopped him. It was the medical records she finally showed him. "I knew before the wedding that David was stealing from my research to sell to rival tech. What I didn't know was that my cancer diagnosis would make him run before I could expose him. He'd built walls around his heart his entire life. But watching her fight for her life in a hospital bed tore them down faster than any wrecking ball. The diagnosis was real. Stage 2 breast cancer discovered during her pre-wedding medical screening. The treatment plan extensive, surgery followed by chemotherapy. The reason her fiancé bolted, he couldn't handle damaged goods, as he'd cruelly texted the night before their wedding. Blake sat beside Alana's hospital bed 3 weeks after she'd shown him her medical records. His laptop open to emails he wasn't reading, his attention focused solely on her sleeping form. The surgery had gone well, doctors removing the tumor while preserving as much tissue as possible. The sterile hospital room, with its mechanical symphony of beeping monitors, became their new world, one where status, wealth, and past deceptions faded against the stark reality of mortality. He'd canceled meetings, rearranged his schedule, and set up a makeshift office in her private room. His executive team handled daily operations via video conference, adapting to their CEO's sudden prioritization of something beyond quarterly profits. Alana stirred, eyes blinking open to find him watching her. "You're still here," she murmured, voice rough from anesthesia. "Where else would I be?" he replied, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. The rhythm of her heart monitor increased slightly at his touch, bringing a smile to his lips. The past weeks had erased any remaining doubts. Blake had personally verified her story. The research theft by her ex-fiancé, the subsequent job offer from Marcus, who'd been unaware of her connection to Blake, the medical records confirming both diagnosis and treatment plans. "You don't have to stay," she insisted weakly. "I'm a mess." Blake leaned forward, pressing his lips gently to her forehead. "I'm exactly where I want to be." Something had fundamentally shifted within him. The man who calculated every risk, who viewed vulnerability as weakness, who kept relationships casual to avoid complications. That man was gone. In his place stood someone willing to face uncertainty, someone who recognized that control was an illusion, someone who found strength in supporting another. When the nurse entered to check vitals, Blake reluctantly moved back to his chair. The woman smiled knowingly at him. He'd become a fixture in the oncology ward, learning medical terminology, questioning doctors, researching treatment options with the same intensity he'd once reserved for business acquisitions. "Pain level?" the nurse asked Alana. "4," she answered honestly. Blake had learned her tells, how she minimized discomfort, how she forced smiles to ease others' worries, how she fought to maintain independence even when accepting help would be easier. After the nurse left, Alana turned toward him. "Tell me something good," she requested, their new ritual to balance the medical discussions. Blake set aside his laptop completely. "I've been thinking about your algorithm, the application for pediatric diagnostics." Her eyes brightened with interest. This was the person he discovered beneath the beautiful exterior, brilliant, passionate about her work, determined to help others even while fighting her own battle. He moved to sit beside her again, carefully avoiding the foreline. "What if we developed it together? My AI infrastructure, your medical innovation." "Marcus would." "Forget Marcus," Blake interrupted gently. "This would be ours. Something meaningful beyond profit margins." The tenderness between them transcended their physical relationship, creating an intimacy more profound than what they'd shared in Miami. His hand brushed hair from her forehead, lingering against her skin. What crisis forced you to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't? How did it change your perspective on relationships? You really want to work with the mess that is my life right now? She asked, vulnerability evident. I want everything with you, he admitted, the words emerging before he could analyze them. The mess, the brilliance, the fight, the future. All of it. As she slept, recovering from treatment, Blake's phone lit up with an anonymous message. She's not who she claims. Ask about the research she stole from Atlanta General. Ask why Pierce really wants your company. His finger hovered over delete, then saved it instead. The further Blake dug into rival Tekka's connection to Alana's research, the more he realized their relationship wasn't coincidence, but not for the reasons he'd feared. Blake stared at the anonymous message, doubt creeping back despite weeks of building trust. The accusation about stolen research couldn't be ignored. Not with millions of dollars and potentially thousands of lives at stake. His home office transformed into Investigation Central, screens glowing with financial records and research papers, connecting dots between pharmaceutical patents and tech innovations that formed a constellation of corruption with Alana at its center. You look like you haven't slept, Alana observed, entering his apartment with the key he'd given her during her recovery. For weeks post-surgery, her energy was returning, though chemo treatments loomed ahead. Blake minimized screens, showing her name linked to patent disputes. Just catching up on work. Her eyes narrowed, catching his deflection. Try again. Truth this time. Their relationship had evolved beyond the physical connection in Miami. Honesty had become their foundation, which made his current secrecy feel like betrayal. Someone sent me information suggesting your research wasn't entirely yours, he admitted, watching her reaction carefully. Instead of defensive anger, her expression showed resigned recognition. David, she said simply. What about him? He's claiming I stole his work. She moved to Blake's desk, opened a drawer where she knew he kept thumb drives, and handed him one from her purse. I've been waiting for this. That's why I brought this. Blake plugged it in, finding years of documented research, date stamp files, recorded lab sessions, journal entries, all proving her ownership of the diagnostic algorithms. David added his name to patent applications after accessing my secure server, she explained, sitting beside Blake at his desk. When I confronted him, he threatened to destroy my career unless I signed the prenup giving his family partial ownership. The pieces aligned: David's connection to Marcus, the rushed wedding, the prenup with unusual clauses. Marcus doesn't know, Alana continued. He thinks he's acquiring legitimate technology. David convinced him I was the thief. As they worked through the evidence together, shoulders touching, Blake felt something beyond physical attraction, intellectual partnership that heightened their connection. Her brilliant mind solving problems alongside his brought a different kind of intimacy. My AI systems could verify the time stamping on these files, Blake suggested, fingers flying across keyboards. Prove definitively who created what when. Alana's hand covered his, stopping his typing. There's more. She explained how her algorithm had evolved beyond cancer detection. The pattern recognition can identify medical fraud, insurance scams, even falsified research papers. That's what David really wants to suppress. It would expose years of his fabricated results. When have you discovered someone was more extraordinary than you initially believed? Did it change how you felt about them? Blake looked at the woman beside him, fighter, genius, survivor, and wondered how he ever doubted her. Your company's AI could scale my cancer treatment algorithm to help millions, she explained, eyes alight with passion. That's why Marcus wants both. But he doesn't know I've developed something even more valuable. She hesitated, something worth killing for. When the brake lines on his car failed after she demonstrated her breakthrough medical algorithm, Blake realized they weren't just fighting for their relationship, they were fighting for their lives. The presentation had gone flawlessly. Alana's diagnostic system, enhanced by Blake's AI architecture, had processed 10 years of anonymized patient data in hours, identifying patterns human doctors had missed in childhood cancer cases. This could reduce pediatric cancer deaths by 30%. Blake told the small group of trusted executives gathered in his private conference room. And that's just the beginning. Alana stood beside the projection screen, professional in a tailored pantsuit that disguised the surgical scars beneath. Her short cropped hair, grown back just enough to style after treatments, framed her face with defiant beauty. The pattern recognition extends beyond medical applications, she explained. When applied to research publications, it identified statistical anomalies in over 40% of papers from these institutions. The screen displayed universities and hospitals, including David Chen's former employers. Blake watched her command the room with calm expertise. 8 months had passed since their Miami encounter. 6 since her surgery. For since they'd begun officially collaborating on integrating their technologies. As the meeting concluded, Blake's security chief approached. "Car's ready, sir. I've swept it as requested." The precaution had seemed excessive until Alana received threatening emails after filing her patent defense. Blake now traveled with enhanced security, varying routes, changing schedules. "Ready?" he asked Alana, hand at the small of her back as they headed to the parking garage. The drive began normally, Blake behind the wheel of his custom Tesla, Alana beside him discussing implementation timelines. Then, approaching the Golden Gate Bridge, the brake pedal went suddenly soft under his foot. "Something's wrong," he said calmly, downshifting manually while trying the emergency brake. Nothing responded. The car continued accelerating down the hill toward increased traffic. "Hold on," Blake commanded, searching for an exit ramp or crash barrier. Alana gripped the dashboard, face pale but composed. There, she pointed to an uphill emergency ramp designed for trucks with brake failures. Blake swerved across lanes, ignoring honking horns, and aimed for the ramp. The car scraped concrete barriers, showering sparks before grinding to a halt halfway up the incline. The safe house in Northern California nestled among redwoods like a secret the forest kept, its windows reflecting endless green that hid them from the world while they plotted their next move. Someone cut the lines. Blake's head of security confirmed over encrypted video call. "Professional job. Clean cuts. No traces." Alana sat wrapped in a blanket on the leather sofa, shock finally setting in hours after their near-death experience. "This is my fault. My research threatened too many people." Blake knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "This is on them, not you. And we're going to fight back." His touch ignited familiar heat despite the circumstances. Near-death experiences had a way of stripping away pretense, leaving only raw truth. Their eyes met with understanding that transcended words. His mouth found hers with desperate intensity, hands pulling her against him as if to verify she was truly safe, truly alive. She responded with equal fervor, fingers threading through his hair, body arching toward his. They made love with primal urgency, clothes discarded hastily, bodies joining with none of their usual patience. Each touch affirmed life. Each kiss pushed back against the death that had nearly claimed them. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets before the fireplace, Blake traced the surgical scar on her breast with tender reverence. "I almost lost you twice now. You're not getting rid of me that easily," she whispered, pressing her lips to his chest above his heart. "Have you ever faced a crisis that revealed someone's true character? What surprised you most about how they, or you responded?" The secure phone rang at 3 a.m., Blake's inside source at Rival Tech. "They're moving tomorrow. Marcus knows where you are." Blake looked at Alana, sleeping peacefully. "It's time to stop running and start fighting back." The board meeting was scheduled for 9, but Blake and Alana arrived at 7 with enough evidence to destroy Marcus Pierce, assuming they could survive long enough to present it. Dawn broke over San Francisco as their unmarked car pulled into the underground parking garage. Blake's security team had secured the building overnight, sweeping for devices, restricting access, creating a controlled environment for what would happen next. "Ready?" Blake asked, straightening his tie in the elevator. Alana nodded, clutching the secure tablet containing their evidence. She wore determination like armor, her recovery from both cancer and betrayal evident in the strength of her posture. The conference room, with its panoramic views of morning fog embracing San Francisco's skyline, became a battlefield. Each presentation slide a weapon, each document ammunition in a war with lives and innovations at stake. Blake's executives arrived first, followed by the board members. At precisely 9, Marcus Pierce entered with his legal team. Confidence etched across his features until he spotted Alana beside Blake. "Good morning," Blake greeted, remaining seated. This emergency session addresses serious concerns about the proposed merger with rival tech. Marcus recovered quickly. "If this is about your personal relationship with my consultant." "This is about fraud," Blake interrupted, nodding to Alana. She stepped forward, commanding the room with quiet authority. "For the past 8 months, I've been documenting systematic theft of medical research, including my own diagnostic algorithms." The presentation began, methodical, devastating, irrefutable. Evidence linked David Chun to falsified research dating back 5 years. Financial transfers tied him to Marcus Pierce well before his involvement with Alana. The pattern matching system, originally designed to identify cancer cells, works equally well identifying fraudulent research papers, Alana explained, bringing up side-by-side comparisons. These statistical anomalies appear in every publication under David Chen's name. Blake watched her with professional admiration that went beyond their personal connection. Her brilliance shone through technical explanations, her passion evident when discussing patient impacts. This was the woman he'd fallen in love with. Not just the vulnerable bride from Miami, but the fighter who survived cancer while exposing corruption, the genius whose work could save countless lives. Marcus shifted uncomfortably as evidence mounted. "These are serious allegations requiring verification by independent experts." "Already done," Blake countered, distributing reports from 3 separate research institutions. "The evidence has been verified." The board members exchanged glances, whispered consultations rippling around the table. Blake had prepared them for this moment, securing their support before the confrontation. When Marcus realized he was losing, he played his final card. "Before you make hasty decisions," he said, sliding a folder toward the board chair, "you should see this." The folder contained photos, Blake entering Alana's hotel room in Miami, documentation suggesting their meeting wasn't coincidence, but planned corporate espionage. "You've been manipulated from the beginning," Marcus told the board, regaining confidence. "They've been working together to defraud this company." The evidence was perfectly fabricated, almost. Blake remained calm, having anticipated this move. Interesting timing, these photos. Supposedly taken months ago, yet only produced now. Alana stepped forward again. The metadata on these images shows they were created 3 days ago, using stock photography and digital manipulation. Her hand found Blake's under the table, fingers intertwining in silent partnership. This battle had brought them together in ways neither could have anticipated. Professional respect, enhancing personal connection, shared purpose, strengthening their bond. What have you stood up against seemingly impossible odds? What gave you the courage to fight rather than flee? Victory seemed certain until Marcus played his final card. Photos of Blake entering Alana's wedding suite, documents suggesting industrial espionage. "You've been manipulated from the beginning," Marcus told the board. "They've been working together to defraud this company." The evidence was perfectly fabricated, almost. The algorithm that could save millions from cancer became her weapon. Using the same pattern recognition to identify the digital fingerprints Marcus had left while fabricating evidence against them. Silence fell across the boardroom as Alana approached the main display screen. All eyes followed her movements. The cancer survivor, whose medical breakthrough had evolved into something far more powerful than anyone anticipated. "Pattern recognition works across multiple domains," she explained, voice steady despite the stakes. "Whether identifying cancer cells or forged documents, statistical anomalies always leave traces." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, monitors reflecting in her determined eyes as she dismantled the false narrative. The boardroom falling silent as executives witnessed not just the destruction of lies, but the birth of innovation that transcended their corporate warfare. The photos showing Blake entering my hotel room contain impossible lighting inconsistencies she demonstrated, highlighting shadow angles that contradicted each other. In this document allegedly showing our conspiracy, she pulled up the metadata analysis, displaying code fragments identical to Rivaltech's proprietary document formatting. Contains digital signatures matching files created on Marcus Pierce's personal laptop. Blake watched her work with undisguised admiration. In that moment, she wasn't his lover or partner, but a brilliant mind dismantling a complex attack with elegant precision. Her intellectual prowess proved as attractive as her physical beauty had ever been. Marcus's face darkened as his fabrications unraveled publicly. This proves nothing. She could have manipulated the data herself. Which is why we brought this, Blake replied, nodding to his security chief who escorted in a familiar face. Marcus's former IT director who had reached out to Blake after discovering the forgery operation. Mr. Pierce instructed me to create those documents 3 days ago. The man testified, providing his own records. I kept copies of the original files and instructions. The board chairman cleared his throat. I believe we've seen enough, Mr. Pierce. Security will escort you from the building while we contact authorities. As Marcus was led away, hurling threats and accusations, the tension in the room gradually dissipated. Board members approached Blake and Alana, congratulating them on their presentation and technology. Your pattern recognition system has applications beyond medicine, one board member noted. The security implications alone are staggering. Blake nodded, which is why we're establishing a separate foundation to ensure ethical implementation. This technology should save lives, not just generate profits. His hand found the small of Alana's back, a gesture of support that felt as natural as breathing. 8 months together had created a partnership that transcended conventional relationships. They were intellectual equals, emotional anchors for each other, lovers who had faced death and emerged stronger. When the boardroom finally emptied, Blake pulled Alana into his arms. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. Their kiss began gently, a celebration of survival, then deepened with the passion that had never diminished between them. His hands framed her face, thumbs caressing her cheekbones as her body pressed against his. "Conference room," she reminded him breathlessly as his lips tracked down her neck. "My company," he countered with a grin, lifting her onto the boardroom table. "My rules. Have you ever witnessed someone turn tables on those who underestimated them? What was the most satisfying underdog victory you've experienced?" The victory celebration continued in Blake's penthouse, champagne and takeout forgotten as they lost themselves in each other. Each touch reaffirmed life. Each kiss celebrated the future they'd fought to secure. With Marcus in custody and the merger secured on their terms, Blake expected triumph. Instead, he found Alana in the executive bathroom, medical results trembling in her hands. "The cancer's back," she whispered. "And this time, even my algorithm might not be enough." 1 year after entering the wrong hotel room, Blake stood in the right hospital room, watching as Alana received her final treatment. Not as a patient, but as the pioneering developer of her own cure. "That's it," the oncologist announced, removing the 4 from Alana's arm. "Last infusion complete. Your own medicine working exactly as designed." Blake squeezed her hand, throat tight with emotion. The past 12 months had tested them beyond anything either could have imagined. Cancer recurrence, experimental treatments, rebuilding his company while establishing their foundation. The research center's dedication ceremony hummed with energy and hope, sunlight streaming through glass walls onto equipment that would now help thousands. Tangible proof that sometimes getting lost leads exactly where you need to be. The Pierce Maddox Center for Medical Innovation, Alana read from the plaque beside the entrance. "Still feels surreal." Blake wrapped his arm around her waist. "Which part? The center or the hyphenated name?" She laughed, leaning into him. "Both. 3 years ago, I was a pediatric nurse with a research hobby. Now I'm co-directing a medical technology foundation with my husband. The simple gold band on her finger caught the light, matched by the one Blake wore. They'd married quietly 6 months ago, ceremony held on the Miami beach near where they'd shared their first kiss. Inside the center, doctors and researchers prepared to implement Alana's diagnostic systems in hospitals nationwide. The algorithm that saved her life would now save thousands more, identifying cancers months earlier than conventional methods. Your speech is in 20 minutes, Blake reminded her, checking his watch. Plenty of time, she replied with a meaningful glance toward the private office they shared. Blake raised an eyebrow. Dr. Pierce Maddox, are you suggesting something unprofessional? Absolutely, she confirmed, pulling him by his tie toward the office door. Inside, she locked the door and pressed him against it, mouth finding his with familiar hunger. Their bodies responded instantly, the chemistry between them undiminished by marriage, strengthened by everything they'd overcome together. His hands traced her body with reverent knowledge, the curves he'd memorized, the scars he'd kissed, the strength that continued to amaze him. Her fingers made quick work of his belt as he lifted her onto the desk. We have 15 minutes, he reminded her between kisses. Then stop talking, she commanded, wrapping her legs around his waist. Their lovemaking had evolved from the desperate passion of Miami to something deeper, richer, infused with history and promise. Each touch carried meaning. Each kiss contained conversations only they understood. Afterward, straightening clothes and hair before the ceremony, Blake watched Alana apply lipstick in the small office mirror. You know what today is? She met his eyes in the reflection. 1 year since you walked into the wrong room. Best mistake I ever made, he replied, arms encircling her from behind. What accident changed the trajectory of your life? Do you believe some mistakes are actually destiny's course corrections? Standing at the podium together, Blake watched Alana address the crowd of medical professionals, investors, and patients who would benefit from their work. Pride swelled in his chest, not just for what they built, but for who she was. The woman he'd found crying in a wedding dress had transformed into his partner in every sense: business, research, life. Their wrong turns had led them exactly where they needed to be. If you take away one message today, Alana concluded her speech, hand finding Blake's beside her, remember that sometimes the wrong door leads to the right future. If this story of mistaken room numbers leading to meant-to-be love touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about how life's biggest disruptions often become our greatest blessings. Tell me in the comments, do you believe in accidents? Or do you think everything happens for a reason? Remember, sometimes it's the wrong turns that lead us exactly where we need to be.